attendees that have joined us. So at this point, I think we should look to kick off. Good morning to everybody that's with us today. Appreciate you taking some time out of your day to learn a little bit more today and join the gentlemen, Tim McNeil and Rob Rogers, the principals over at OSR Manage, to hear their thoughts on post-pandemic sales process. And, you know, we've all seen that the sales process has definitely changed during the pandemic. Some of those changes are going to stick, and some realities have really changed in terms of face-to-face meetings, you know, where people live now. You know, it used to be you'd see everybody in the office, but some people aren't going back. So we really need, you know, they're here today to really help us say, how can we get our sales team ready as we, you know, continue to get vaccinated and hopefully move out of this crisis. But before we get started there, just a couple quick house cleaning things from the vCIOToolbox side. For those that weren't with us last month, we recently launched the MSP Customer Success Facebook group, and Rachel joined our team as our community director there. Rachel, maybe you can take a minute and talk a little bit about what we're doing in that group today.
Sure, yes. So we are looking to build a supportive community of vCIOs, account managers, other QBR collaborators to just help each other with client relations and customer satisfaction. Brian will be putting in quite a few learnings during the week, but we also are facilitating conversations so that we can all learn from one another. It's kind of like a unofficial peer group in a way.
Yeah, you know, our focus is really going to be on the customer success journey, you know, and we really look at the customer success journey being from the point of prospecting and actually getting to know the client through that onboarding phase, of course, the account management phase, which is what vCIOToolbox specializes in. And then how do we stay in contact, engage with those groups over time so we can, you know, you know, the reality of being an MSP, our customers are the gift that keeps on giving, right? There's always new changes, new opportunity that comes up in there. And we want to make sure that we're harvesting that opportunity, but at the same time, doing as much as we can to better the relationship with our clients. So, you know, we're looking for your input on that as well, because, you know, we're certainly, I always say, and I'm not very smart, but, you know, we're looking for smarter people to help us understand where we can improve too. So with that, I want to welcome again Rachel to the team. She's relatively new. This will be the last time I welcome you, Rachel. But she's going to be really helping moderate, and she's going to be helping a lot of the messaging that comes out as well. So thank you. The other thing I just want to hit on very quickly from the vCIOToolbox side, we're about to launch our March release. We've got a couple different things coming into the system. We are bringing in our IT Glue integration. So those that are managing assets from IT Glue, that'll be available to you. We're also introducing the concept of maturity levels. As we know, our assessments aren't one size fits all. And following a little bit of the model that the CMMC has, where there's 5 maturity levels that you can assess on a client depending on where they live and what they're doing, we're inputting that capability within our system as well. So you can really streamline that process for those 10-person customers, but make sure you're going deep and wide for those customers that are your, you know, key cornerstone accounts in your portfolio. Final thing I'll close out with is we've got a number of new templates that'll be launched in this as well. All of these will be available within your university. And a couple of the big ones are Office 365, a more formalized template on that beyond what the email does today, kind of separating on-premise and the cloud. And ISO 2701 will be coming into the system as well. So with that, I'd really like to turn the tables now and formally introduce Tim McNeil and Rob Rogers of OSR Manage. And, you know, we'll jump into our presentation. But with that said, you know, why don't one of you tell us a little bit about your organization and what you guys do, just to help everybody that isn't familiar with you on the call today understand what OSR is all about.
Okay, sure. So thanks for having us here, Brian. Long time no talk, man.
Yeah,
what has it been, a week?
It's been a whole week.
Yeah. For those that don't know, we also host a podcast together, MSP Business School. So we spend a lot of time together, but today, right, you know, we really want to focus on the on what they feel post-pandemic sales is going to look like.
Yeah. So, you know, just to give everybody a snapshot of what we do, we are a fractional sales manager as a service for MSPs. We come from the industry. We've been in this industry for, gosh, a long time now. And we do the recruiting, the training, and the day-to-day management of sales teams, where we bring on your very first salesperson all the way through an entire department, whether it's one location or multiple location.
Mhm.
Then we put all of those employees in exclusive territories into a peer group that they meet with their peer members every single day, whether it's a level 1 type of peer group or level 3 type of peer group where they're trying to understand how to close more deals. Are they trying to close more appointments, or are they trying to close more deals? And then we have sales training at the end of the week that we do with everybody, and we manage those KPIs as we're going along. So that's what Tim and I have been doing for the last 7 years, and we've been in the industry for, Tim, like 12 years now, 13 years.
Yeah, for me,
Yep.
it'll be, I'm at 11 and a half.
Yeah.
So,
So it's been a while.
yeah, it's been a bit. It's been a bit. And
Just
also
means we're all getting old.
yeah, to add one thing just to what Rob said, he mentioned that we did come from the industry. We used to work at an MSP in the Hartford, Connecticut area. Had really a tremendous amount of success there. I was the top salesperson. Rob was actually my sales manager, and we saw a need in the MSP community to help them with their sales in general. Initially, that started out with lead generation, and just like Rob said, that's really transitioned to the fractional sales manager, the outsourced sales manager.
Awesome, guys. Well, there's certainly a need in the marketplace, especially those, technology-led firms that are just bringing on their first salesperson. One of the biggest things I always say about you guys is you give a community to those that work alone.
Yes.
And when you really look at when you bring on that first salesperson, he's in a sea of technicians. So now you got this noisy guy in the corner disrupting all the quiet flow of traditional engineering, and he doesn't seem to do real well in their minds too, because sales is wrought with rejection, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So really one of the things that I've seen as being the biggest strength for OSR is as you're building that sales team, it gives them, those sales reps, a community to commiserate in and really be a part of. So with that, let's kind of jump into the presentation itself and talk a little bit about, the future of prospecting as the pandemic ends. So, guys, why don't you kick off and tell us, what are the expectations after COVID?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start off with that. What we expect for the expectations of sales post-COVID is kind of what it was pre-COVID, right? And to us, there's different stages when it comes to that. There's the prospecting side, and then there's the closed business side. So pre-COVID, we were here saying, hey, salesperson, you really need to be generating 2 to 3 new appointments per week, and that still is our goal, right? But understanding that COVID is kind of restricted that, especially in certain areas of the country that are not as open as others, we'll say. That 2 to 3 appointments per week that we were looking for pre-COVID, that was pretty much cut in half for a while for most people around the country. And we're starting to see states open up. We're definitely starting to see, with that, we're starting to see a trend of appointments going up as well. And with those appointments comes more closed business, right? The other thing that happened during COVID is, although there were less appointments, we did find that there was a better success rate with those appointments, more meat on the bone. Because at the end of the day, if somebody was going to take an appointment during COVID, there was probably a reason for it. So that was kind of nice to see. But where we were really looking for 2 to 3 appointments per week, which generally led to eventually 1 closed piece of business per month pre-COVID. That was kind of dialed back during COVID. I see that starting to happen again, probably in the next 6 to 12 months, where you are, as a salesperson, really looking to get 1 closed piece of business per month, and to do that, again, 2 to 3 new appointments per week. That should get you to one closed piece of business per month.
Yeah, and when Timmy says that, he means monthly recurring revenue, right?
Yes,
we're talking about
correct.
Service contracts. We're not talking about a project.
Yep,
or something like that. We mean one piece of, whatever your master service agreement is, that should be the the expectation and the goal of the rep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I really agree with what you're saying too, Tim, about the the prospect now in taking meetings, right? You know,
Mhm.
there was a lot of, ability to take a meeting just to kind of get some information, especially if there was an open hour in the day. But now in this kind of Teams and Zoom type selling process, I know from the buyer side, I only want to take that meeting if I'm committed to that meeting, because it might take away from time I have to do other meetings I need to do too. So
Yep.
it has shown me, at least from the demos that we've taken as well, it's a more interested buyer,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they're at least somewhere deeper in the journey than just looking to obtain information. So that's definitely a difference that I've seen as well during, during COVID times.
Yeah, I read a statistic from Gartner, I think, that 57% of the buying decision is already done before the first engagement with the sales rep now. People are just doing a lot more research in our industry to understand what they're looking for and what they want before they even engage a salesperson. So to speak to the Zoom piece does have a failure rate like a phone call does. So, back in the day, you set up your first phone call with people and you would have a 25% failure rate, right? You set up the appointment and it only happens 3 out of 4 times. And we're seeing that with the first Zoom call as well. But once they get past that, it's a much more engaged buyer and a faster sales cycle.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Tim.
No, I was just going to say that that just all ties back to just what you were talking about, Brian, with and we've seen it as well, just more meat on the bone, and people are much farther along in the education process than they were pre-COVID, and that's making a big difference.
The other thing I've seen is it's really taking away some time too, in terms of relationship building. Sometimes now it's a block hour. As you know, sometimes when you're doing a sales call, especially from a managed services perspective, it's nice to get on that client site, maybe get a tour of the building, which allows you to start talking about some other things and doing some
Huge.
relationship building.
Yep.
Now you've got to make sure that you've got your cadence of sales so crisp that you are able to foster some of that relationship building within this meeting that's being conducted, just like we're doing this webinar today, but also know everybody's pretty much got a hard stop at the top of the hour, right? Or at the top of the half hour, depending on how you do this. So that's a nuanced piece of this whole new sales cycle too. How do you build relationships with people you're not meeting face to face? I look at almost 70% of my customers, I've never met them. Right.
Yeah.
I've never met them except in Zoom. I mean, and some of the guys on the call today, I think we'd probably consider ourselves friends at this stage, and we don't know each other personally or haven't met yet. Right. So it's an interesting time in that regard. And I think that's something that we can't, we've got to make sure our sales reps understand as well is, hey, you got to find some way to build some relationship here while you're doing these meetings.
Yeah. And I'll tell you coming out of this pandemic in the next 2 quarters here, there's going to be a land grab for a couple of different reasons. As far as the networking goes and the building of the relationships, right now all reps and all owners are used to doing Zoom meetings, right? And so they've built that understanding, and now it's going to start becoming white noise. And the person that gets out there, goes to the trade shows, goes to the events, does the breakfast and learns and the lunch and learns, and goes to meet people more, are going to set themselves above the white noise, right?
Mhm.
The typical. And that's where we're really starting to see our reps start to make a difference, as we're coming into these reduced restrictions that we're having in these different areas.
That's an interesting concept right there, Rob. Let's maybe chew on that one for a minute.
Mhm.
So you're really saying that kind of getting back to the old way is going to be the differentiator now, because we've all got kind of lulled into a state of complacency where, hey, I can conduct a Zoom meeting, avoid the windshield time, really shorten the process a little bit. And as we all know, when you start shortcutting a process as things return to normal, that's where you fail, right? Anytime, when you take a 3-step sales process, try to make it 2.
Yep.
Usually no surprise when you don't close the deal, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, I think the sales process will forever change, not just in the MSP industry, but in almost every industry, from the standpoint that you don't need the amount of windshield time that you used to have, just like you said, but there should, depending on where you are in the country. I mean, you can't replace the in-person, right? So let's say you have a 4-step sales process. At least one of those steps should be on-site. They just should be. And that kind of goes back to what Rob was saying of just being a little different right now, where people are still really Zoom and Teams focused, and in a lot of areas you need to be. But as things start opening up, there really should be at least one, and maybe more, depending on your comfort level of being on site during the sales process.
Yeah.
And I just want to jump in here. Kendall made a comment, and welcome, Kendall. Great to see you here today. But he made a comment, right? You know, the old paper newsletter stands out, right? The old lumpy mail concept. Some of the old guard tactics are things. And he's also stating, and I think a lot of us feel this way, I'm religious with Sales Navigator, but LinkedIn Sales Navigator is a great tool to get to those prospects too.
Yeah.
And engage them in a non-threatening way, you know?
Yeah.
If you do it right, I always go back to building relationships, right? It's everything we're about. You got to make friends with somebody before you try to sell them. And when I say friends, I mean business friends. You know, comment on their conversations if they resonate with you. Don't be that guy that just comments on everything. You know, use LinkedIn Sales Navigator so you can stay in touch with the people you care about in their businesses you care about, so you know what's going on. So you can send that, you know, handwritten letter or something like that saying, hey, congratulations, I heard you guys closed this major government contract. Kudos to you. You know, it doesn't take much to stand out, but it takes effort.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, into that part of it, Brian, one of the things that we find very successful over here is our ideal 250 list, and making sure that we stand out using that. And one of the ways that we do that,
there's an inside joke for those on the call. Rob looks to get this 250 list into every conversation we have, but it's very valid.
Brian, it's 15 minutes this time.
Yeah, 15 minutes. Yeah.
Like, it's so important, right? Like, those are your ideal clients that you want. And what you need to do is create Google alerts for all those guys, and, you know, just in their companies. So when something does happen, you know, you find it, right? And you get it first, and you can see it, and you can send them a quick little note. The elevated marketing and the elevated effort needs to be applied to those things. And to the point of the old system, going back to the paper type things, that's going to be so big. Snail mail, all these things that are different than, you know, the digital side. Just make yourself that a little bit different coming into this land grab that's going to be happening. Yeah,
and I can tell you just from my experience when you know, Rob and I were in the MSP industry and I was a salesperson there, one of the things that I did that made me different in the Hartford area specifically was doing the lumpy mail, was doing handwritten notes. And I feel like just as we've turned into this more and more social media driven world, not as many people do that. And sending something by mail right now, to me, it's huge. It automatically separates you. It just does, especially if it's a handwritten note or an article that's relevant to a prospect group. That's worth its weight in gold, in my opinion.
So if I can,
go ahead.
No, please go, Rob.
No, so just to bring it back a little bit to what we were talking about before, on the Zoom calls, if you're prospecting, I would definitely go out and as you're allowed to, start going out and door knocking, right? Going to your clients, talking to your clients, then going to the left of that client and to the right of that client, introducing yourself to those people in a face-to-face way. And, you know, doing Zoom meetings for your discovery. Maybe you want to set up a discovery. Maybe you want to set up an on-site through Zoom, but the ownership should always have at least one face-to-face meeting when we're coming out of this thing. Nothing replaces that. So I just wanted to make sure that, you know, although we're talking about a lot of the prospecting side here, and we're talking about, you know, mixing in this hybrid Zoom type of scenario, you're going to have windshield time, especially if you're ownership going in.
Yep, Kendall just threw in a great comment, and we'll kind of close out this section and move into what's different about prospecting now in terms of drip campaigns. Digital conversation like this is the table stake, right? It's going to be the paper and the process we do around that sets us apart with our clients, you know, and, you know, I think that's, you know, my takeaway from this is make sure you don't shortcut the process. Do the things you used to do that were standard, but now they're going to become differentiators because most of your competitors are going to hide behind the screen, just like we're doing here today. All right. So with that, let's talk a little bit about, you know, the concept of drip campaigns and LinkedIn, and tell us what you guys really mean by this.
Yeah. So our stance on specifically emailing and LinkedIn has changed since COVID started, like it has for a lot of people. Not that we didn't believe it before or believe in it before. We did, and we actively used it, and we recommended that everybody used it. But I think things have changed so much. To Kendall's point, things have changed a lot over the last year, obviously. So what used to be, we'll call that email blasting to the ideal 250 list or LinkedIn work, that used to be more of a fallback, and now it's more of a lead in a lot of ways, right? So, we very strongly recommend if you're prospecting or if you're doing drip campaigns, you find that ideal 250 list, and it doesn't mean that it's 250, right? It could start out with 30, but you find people who are in your radius, they're in the industries you want to work in, and they're also in the size that you're looking for. And those are people that you want to spend extra attention on. And that goes back to setting up Google alerts, like Rob was saying, and following them on LinkedIn and making sure that whenever something happens with that company, you're on top of it and you're able to comment, like, just be more engaged.
Yeah.
Right. And that alone is just a large shift that we've seen with pretty much everybody on LinkedIn and with email marketing. And I mean, Rob, I know you can add a fair amount to this as well. But
Yeah, so the way that I used to direct the reps that we manage is after you have a conversation, then you link up on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
Right. And then you try and friend them. And that was the way it used to go, because LinkedIn, even with Sales Navigator, was a one-to-one relationship. There wasn't a way to do a one-to-many type of scenario, with LinkedIn. But now with all these automation products that they have out there, Cleverly, Octopus, the different ones out there, you can use it as a lead-in to getting to know people faster, right? And finding the people that you're looking to speak to. So it's a good way to now, instead of picking up the phone and making 100 calls, you can pick out 100 people that you want to use or you want to go out and chat with and do an introduction and then do like a warm way to get in touch with those people. So the way that LinkedIn has been used now in this last year has completely changed. And it's no longer an after effect. After you meet somebody, you try and hook up. Now you're trying to introduce yourself through LinkedIn and then making a phone call.
Yeah.
So the script is flipped, and it's become pretty powerful.
The other thing I would say that I'm looking at here in hearing from you is it's also what goes back to what we say about the actual sales process. The payoff is in the follow-up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the biggest things here when I hear drip campaigns, getting on LinkedIn, doing more touches, is more engagement with the individual you're trying to get to and showing that follow-up and persistence in a pleasant yet different kind of manner than just strictly hitting them over the head with that sales message over and over again, right?
Yep.
And, as we know, and I'm sure you guys have seen these stats being in your position, but it was one that blew me away. The magic doesn't happen until the 5th or 6th, 7th touch. But so many sales reps quit if they can't get that person on the line after 3 or 4 tries. 100%. So they're actually doing all the legwork to just get to the success and stopping just as success is going to meet them. It's an amazing concept.
It's weird, right?
Yeah, but it's true.
Yeah.
It goes back to the 9 touches of marketing, right? You got to see the brand 9 times before you make an association with it and build trust.
Before you
same thing with the sales call. Yeah. Same thing with the sales call. And the thing is, I don't know about those of you that might be in the buyer's position out there. I remember those people that are persistent, and I'll go back to them when there's time and let them know, hey, the reason I'm coming back to you now is now I need your product.
Yeah.
Now is the right time. And you chased me enough that you made an impression that I'm not calling your main sales line. I'm trying to find you.
Yeah.
Kudos, man.
Yep.
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, 7 to 12. I've always been told 7 to 12 times to call, drip, just get in front of somebody before they even know that you exist, right? And it could be more to get to that first appointment, but 7 to 12 times, and the average salesperson stops following up after 3.
Yep.
So there's a huge discrepancy there, and that's where doing these drip campaigns is so important. If you stick to it and you do it religiously on top of any other calling efforts that you're doing as well, it immediately starts to separate you.
Yeah,
it just does.
I mean, gosh, 7 years ago, 5 years ago, you only needed one channel to get to your
Yeah.
prospects, right? That is no longer the case. Man, I would love to just pick up the phone and make calls, right? But that no longer works. You've got to do all multi-channels to get through. And, you never know what is going to work with that, because they do so much research on their own end before before they get to you, right? Even if you're using wedge styles or whatever type of sales style you're using, yeah, it's an educated buyer. So you better be doing a lot of different content in a lot of different ways.
But, and also just to stick with LinkedIn a little bit, just one other comment, Brian, going back to what you said about having hard stops now, which is very accurate and very true. It's that much more, it's that much more important for a salesperson to go through LinkedIn before those meetings, do your research, find out whoever you're talking with, find out who you're connected with.
Yeah.
Find out if you went to the same college. If you're a sports person, do they like the sports that you do? Right. I mean, there's things that you can do to create that better relationship right out of the gate, and gain a little bit of instant credibility, knowing that you've done your research and that person knows that.
Yeah.
So Tim, go ahead.
Just real quick, Brian, like one of the things you guys should be writing down is when you're going into a meeting, a discovery meeting, you should have two things about their business and one thing personal about them that you should try and have in your pocket that you can pull back at some point, whether it's their About Us page or their LinkedIn. You want a 2-1 type of ratio there, so you can pull it up if you need it.
Yeah, and I want to stop you guys there for a minute, just because we have some comments that are coming in through chat that I want to touch upon.
Sure thing, bud.
I got one from Gabe that talks a little bit about, how he separates himself, and he does it through voice and video private messages on LinkedIn. Those are some ways to kind of stand out from the crowd. And look, the three of us are big fans of video, right? So I agree with that statement wholeheartedly.
Mm-hmm.
There's other comments, obviously the customers are researching us as well, right? So, make sure that they understand what you're about. And we got to be doing things as companies like this, the thought leadership pieces, where we're making sure that we're getting things out to our customers. So when they do that research on us, they can really understand what we're all about.
Mm-hmm.
And go ahead, Tim.
Oh, no, I sorry to interrupt. I just want to bring one real life example to this. And I know it's maybe beating a dead horse, but just one experience that I had with LinkedIn going back, this is probably 10 years ago. There was one pretty large client that I brought on for that MSP was somebody that, quite honestly, it was one of those 7 to 12. I probably called that person 10, 12, 15 times. I knew it was a company and an organization that would have been a great fit for us. So this is when LinkedIn it was obviously there, not quite as big as it is now, not even close. Figured out that the CEO went to the same college as I did. Went to Plattsburgh State in very upstate New York. So after probably, 7, 8, 9 voicemails, I finally just called him up, left him a voicemail and said, "Hey, so you went to Plattsburgh State. I'd love to know how you got to the Hartford area." And that's what did it. He called me back, and one conversation led to another, led to an on-site, led to eventually a signed agreement. So it's just doing that research, finding those commonalities, but before or during the prospecting phase.
That's awesome. It is real, right? People want to feel connected. All of us as humans want to feel connected to those people that we're with, and those things, those allegiances, college and people, and probably one of the biggest ones for each of us, right? Those allegiances, Robb, you're part of your former service, obviously you've got a huge community of former military folks, and there's that bond that comes from that. So we need to identify those bonds with those folks and really kind of leverage that as we move through our process, but in an authentic and genuine way, right? If you're doing it just to get the business, you're going to fail. It doesn't become an elixir. Yeah. So with that being said, let's kind of move on next. We've got a couple other quick comments. Hey, if you can only call 30, only follow up with 30. I'd argue with that. If you call 30, you're going to be lucky to get one of them on the phone. Blast, blast, blast. You got to touch some people, right?
Yeah.
Other thing is CRM. You got to have a way to manage this flow. And I agree with that. We're all humans. We need reminders. We need things like this. And I'm going to throw out a little teaser there. You might see some cool things like that coming into vCIOToolbox down the line. But anyhow, we're not here for that today. Moving on, let's kind of hit our next topic, which is a little bit about the virtual meetings and onsite. And we've talked a little bit about that, in various steps of this today. But let's really kind of drill into the meeting specifics on that, right? And kind of maybe, guys, take me through the process for each.
Sure.
All right, Rob, you want to start that?
No, go ahead, bud.
Yeah. So like Rob and I have always we've always believed in pre-COVID, pre-Zoom, pre-Teams. We used to really strongly believe in starting off the sales process. The initial discovery call was less of a discovery call, more of a 15 to 20 minute intro call to make sure that everybody is aligned correctly. Not that you don't have information going into that call and business intelligence on that prospect, but it's really to make sure that your core values and that you match as companies and have common ground and move forward. So we actually have kind of shifted our belief in don't start off with the phone call anymore. Start off the initial call with Teams or Zoom or whatever you use. And after that, that's where it can very much depend on the area. That initial discovery call where you're doing that scan of their network or just seeing the lay of the land, that's where it probably makes sense to do that on-site phase. And after that, that's where, again, it really varies where you are in the country, but after that, it's kind of personal preference, and it tends to be switching back to Zoom or Teams. So that one on-site and then back to Zoom or Teams, and then finishing out the sales process that way. I do think there, again, just to bring up what I said before, I think we'll see more on-sites moving forward. But that's what we've seen right now for a lot of MSPs.
I think we're still, depending on where you are regionally and also depending on just the comfort level of the person you're going to see. I think, on-sites are obviously going to increase as the vaccinations continue on and we move towards the end of this crisis. But I think even in the big picture of things, there's going to be a mix of virtual meetings and on-sites now. Mm-hmm. Some of those follow-up meetings that used to be on-sites are going to become online, proposal presentations because that initial relationship has been established. And part of me says that's great because there's going to be an increased efficiency in the process. And as long as you get that on-site, like you said, at least once in there, Tim, you're getting that face-to-face moment. You're getting to see what they're about, which is tough to replicate, right? Not understanding how they're running that business and what sits behind the scenes. You can usually tell, as most of you on this call would probably agree, what you're dealing with just by the office that they keep, right? If the office is not really tidy, being kept neat, or hasn't been modernized in 25 years, you're probably going to have a little bit tougher time introducing some of those newer concepts versus some of the more sleeker things. So, there are those soft things that we learn as we go into those client environments as well, that we do need to establish that have been tough to establish now. I think there's going to be another problem that we haven't really addressed, and I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on this as well. But some of those people aren't coming back to the office that we need to talk to, right? So, there are job roles that they're going to just allow to, many companies have determined, hey, we can consolidate space or we can do other things and let those job roles remain at home. Mm-hmm. How do we get that live visit with those people? What are some of the tactics that you guys are thinking there? Because that's going to be a challenge, I think, as we move forward. CEO doesn't work from home or work from the office anymore. He wants to have the meeting with you. How are you going to see that space?
I mean, could you have imagined 2 years ago that everybody was going to work from home and we would make it work, right? It was just not going to happen. And now there is a big potential for projects right now to help clients right-size their offices. So, I do a lot of research. I'm always reading on the internet to try and find ways to get our reps into, prospecting activities. And one of the things I saw was 88% of the businesses out there are going to increase their IT budget this year. coming out of COVID, because they have pent up projects that they didn't do because everybody turtled up, right? So there's a lot of projects that were put on hold, and you know that everybody, I talk to MSPs all the time, and they see it too. There's a lot of projects that are that were put on hold that are going to be out there, that are going to be increasing, that you can find out from your QBRs. But the number one projects that we're seeing out there is right sizing offices.
Yep.
It is just the biggest project that is out there right now, with some good money attached to it, right? And what happened was, when COVID came, we all went into protectionism mode. So everybody had to go to their home office. It wasn't really thought out well. It was a mad dash to get everybody in the home office and then figure out security as they were doing it. But now it's a growth opportunity to come back to the office. Now they're coming back to the office with ways to figure out, well, I can save money here. This is a profit generator for me, or this is a revenue generator for me, because I can go out of the city, go into the burbs, or whatever I want to do, and right size my office. So one of the things that we tell people all the time is, as soon as you're having that conversation and you're trying to learn about business intelligence, is, hey, coming out of this pandemic, have you guys considered right sizing your office? And that immediately opens, because a lot of them have already talked about it, and it immediately opens up a conversation, make you look proactive. So it's huge, Brian, that thing that you were talking about, right sizing.
Yeah, but you touched upon something else I don't think we should overlook here too. There is a lot of pent up spend opportunity out there. Companies cocoon themselves, kind of said, hey, we're going to stockpile cash, see how this thing plays out. We don't know how long it's going to be. We don't know what it's going to be. And while some industries certainly got decimated during this, right? Hospitality decimated, a lot of the entertainment industries have gotten decimated. There's no doubt that there's been, it's been felt by many. I think most of us on the call as MSPs will say this might have even been a time of flourishing. And we actually saw things at least stay steady, if not, increase over this time. And there were many industries like that as a result of what happened here. But those companies also held cash during that process, maybe didn't do the same level of hiring they would have under normal times. And there's going to be an influx of capital that's going to be required during this. So, really look inside the customers you have today and those prospects you're talking to, and see where those opportunities that didn't exist a year ago because everybody's, concerned about cash may now exist. Plus the fact that the doors are opening again. Yeah. Now you can go in on site and make those replacements. Should be a lot of pent up refresh also out there available for you.
The one thing I'd like to, have everybody consider is, if you're an MSP that does not do projects outside of your MSP, outside of your client deck, right? I would strongly suggest that for at least a couple of quarters, allow a project that is the appropriate size, like maybe it's $5,000 in labor and above, but allow your reps to go out there, make the calls for those project only deals where the MSP deal may be a year out. There's going to be a land grab. There's going to be a lot of projects that are going to be opening up. Allow the rep to go out there, blast everything, because the summer of love is coming. It just is. And allow your reps to go after projects that aren't associated with an MSP deal immediately. And you're going to see a lot more appointments that you're going to be able to get. Right.
Well, not only that, I think if somebody's going to spend the time and money to have you move their office, it's going to be pretty rare that they don't have a recurring contract attached to that. Eventually, may not happen. Yeah. Yep. Or like right behind it, right in the wings. Like the reason that Rob brings that up, and the reason that I believe in that very strongly too. Look, there were a lot of people, as people moved to home, there were a lot of MSPs that they just weren't ready for it. And look, it was a big deal. It's hard to prepare. Yeah. It's hard to prepare for something so huge. You're an MSP, you've got 50, 100, 150 clients, and all of a sudden everybody's like, hey, I got to move home tomorrow. Can you give me a hand?
Yeah.
Some people were better prepared for that than others. So as people go back to the office, those prospects that struggled to go in to work from home, they're going to remember that. And there's going to be a lot of opportunity there. Hey, my MSP, yeah, they got us home. I get it, COVID, but it wasn't that great.
Yep.
And that
gonna
right
open.
there, if they have doubt as a salesperson, you've got to expose that, and it's a good opportunity to get some extra appointments.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got one more topic to close out on, and I think that's perfect from a timing perspective. You know, what do you guys mean here by, you know, focusing on your stories?
Yeah, the number one thing that we see when we're working with clients and we're working with you know, sales reps out there is they're great at you know, discovering inefficiencies. They're great at talking about how they're going to increase productivity and how they're going to be able to fix these things and talking about all the features that their company can provide to a prospect. What sets you apart is having the prospect identify with you on an emotional level.
Mhm.
Period. That is what makes you different than every other IT company out there. And the way that you do that is through telling them stories how whatever you're discussing relates back to how you were able to crush this with somebody else. And there's a lot of different, you know, companies out there that do it now. StoryBrand is out there. There's other people, but you always want to talk in a feature, and then you want to transition it to the benefit, the emotional tie-in for the prospect. And the best way to do that is through a story. And the story can be anything that you want as it relates to what's going on, and you're not the hero. Your employees have to be the hero. How you saved a client has to be the hero. It can't be you as the, you know, the prima donna at the show, right? It's got to be your employee that saved the day. And being able to tie that, whatever issue you have in, so you tie in your features and your benefit is the story. That's it just makes it so much different. And it doesn't have to be the biggest thing in the world, right? You didn't have to solve world hunger. But if you came in over the weekend to fix a server before anybody got in there on a Monday and knew something was wrong, you can build a story around that,
Yeah.
right? That's the level that we're talking about. It's hard for the IT owner to build stories because they just get in there and they do it. You know, they're not always good at, you know, bragging about it. So that's one of the things that people have to work on, is being able to tie in that story.
Well, and that's one of the things that, you know, as we work with MSPs and we ask them, hey, what are your stories? And at first they're like, well, we don't, you know, we just kind of do our thing. We're like, okay, we start digging a little bit. And the example that Rob brings up of they had to go in over the weekend, and, you know, the storm came through, had to go in over the weekend. Client didn't even know they were down, but they fixed it. They were up on Monday, you know, business as usual.
Mhm.
To them, to a lot of MSPs and to a lot of MSP owners, that's just what you do. And that is accurate. That is what you do. But putting a story around that and tying it into your efficiencies and having the prospect understand that, hey, this is the kind of service that you're going to get. You may go down, and it doesn't matter if it's Saturday at 3:00. If your servers are down, you know, we've got the proactive style to be able to come in, fix that, and you're up and running. And when you show up Monday morning, it's like nothing happened. That's a big deal. And to be able to speak to that and create stories around that, that's where it's critical.
And those stories can be a sales separator too, right? Because, you know, one of the things that I hear often from my clients is it's getting tough out there because, you know, the fact that we can do the job is just the price for admission, right? And the buyers are so
Table
much
stakes.
more,
Yeah.
you know, the buyers are so much more knowledgeable than they were in the past. But you got to really start in the sales process separating yourself. You know, I talk about it all the time about strategic planning within our QBR, but it can start at the sales level. Hey, we don't want to be perceived as a vendor to you. We want to be a partner. And the way we become a partner to you is by better understanding what you're trying to achieve, what are those initiatives you're chasing after, and the obstacles in the way to whatever you feel success. Knowing that's going to allow us to look at those things you're trying to do, Mr. Customer, and really make sure that when we're making recommendations to you, it's going to drive you forward, right? We're putting the win in their column at all times, yet we're getting the information we need to get more successful, to increase the probability of close, and to shorten the sales cycle at the same time, right? So it's by telling those stories in a format where it's all about you, Mr. Customer. You're going to get the win, and the byproduct's a win-win, right?
Mhm.
And that's really what we're looking to do here. So, you know, look at your narrative. If you're the guy that shows up at a sales call, because this is what's going to happen, and this is why it's going to separate you from others in those sales processes when you tell these stories. The other guy's talking about features and benefits. He's talking about technical. He's talking about those kind of things to people that classically are business people. And if you can get in there and really talk about their business, understand where they're trying to head, and really start forming that bond as early as humanly possible, it's only going to increase the relationship. And Gabe said it perfectly in our comments over here. Hey, they'll forget what you say. They're not going to forget how you make them feel.
Yeah.
Right. Like people buy from you and they stay for service. Like that's just how it works. You know, nobody's buying your service, they're buying you.
Yep.
So if you can figure out a way to make because when they're looking at the 3 proposals, you've got to find a way to make it look so they're not just looking at the price. Right. So the way that we do it over here is we say in the first stage of your on-site, when you're doing that banter stage and you're gathering the business intelligence, you're not gathering the business intelligence as a sales engineer. You're gathering the business intelligence as an owner to an owner. You want to know about their business. Are they looking to be a profitable company that's trying to increase their profit, or are they trying to increase their growth? What are they trying to do? Understand their top level strategy. If you can get yourself into understanding that, then everything else will flow in underneath it. That's the number one thing that'll differentiate. Don't go in there and try and solve the problem because the other IT guy is going to go in there and try and solve the problem too. You have to solve the strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, do you have any closing thoughts before we open up the floor for Q&A? Because we're getting to that time of the hour.
Timmy?
Yeah, I guess my closing thoughts are, we've already seen in different parts of the country a sense of normalcy coming back, Florida, Texas, some areas down south. There, just to say again, what we've mentioned a couple times here, there's going to be a lot of opportunity coming out of this for new business, whether it's just people wanting the human interaction of being in a face-to-face meeting, or people right-sizing their office. There's just going to be, it's hard to, in my opinion, it's really hard to put into words. Like there's going to be a large amount of money up for grabs in the next 12 to 18 months. Mm-hmm. And it's just really important that you do the foundational work and put in the time on the prospecting level to get yourself known, to get yourself in front of these new prospects or people you haven't talked to before, and just talk about your value and what makes you different. If you can do that, you will grow significantly over the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, totally agree. Like these projects that are coming up, they're going to be big, and a lot of it has to do with right sizing your accounts, whether it's you find out in the QBR or you're finding out in the prospecting side. You need to focus on asking those open-ended questions about right sizing and coming back to the office. And the person who is the sales rep, I would encourage you to focus your sales rep on making a lot of seasoning calls here in the next couple of quarters, to get that land grab, to make those touches and integrate marketing. Make sure that you integrate your marketing into those messages and do follow up, because there is a mass market share that's going to be changing. This is just like 2009, right? It's just the same time. And we make our reps if they're doing part-time calling for that day or prospecting for that day, they're making 40 calls that day. If they're doing full-time prospecting that day, they're making between 80 and 100. So if you're not at that level, my reps are beating you, and they're going to make more calls, make more touches, and take business. So that's what I would encourage you to do.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So with that said, I want to open up the floor for Q&A. Folks, if you've got a question that you want to ask Rob and Tim, a couple of ways you can do that. You can either put it into the Q&A box, or if you're shy. Otherwise, we'd love to have you come on and talk. So if you raise your hand, I'll be happy to bring you on. You can ask your question, and hopefully the boys will be able to give you an answer.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Looks like we've got a question from Gabe. Gabe, how are you today?
I'm doing good. Appreciate you guys. Let me see if I can turn a video on here. You might turn me off, or you might just get the picture, right?
Yeah, we got your picture right now. I'm not sure if video is going to come on. I got to admit, I'm learning these controls.
That's probably better anyway. I got to go shave. I was wondering what you guys, you're thinking a little more deeper into virtual events. We're in the New Orleans area, and physical contact events, we've had success in the past with with those type of meetings, but there's a little more caution because of what's been going on. We've experimented a little bit with like bourbon tasting, bringing on a bourbon expert and sending everybody some samples, and going from that. I was just wanting your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so it's funny you say that. My wife's company actually did that probably eight or 10 months ago, and it was pretty cool the way it worked out. I think in events like that, it can be doing something like that virtually can be very effective, and not only for prospecting and talking to prospects, but also internally and to help the team just blow up some steam. Mm-hmm. I think on average, like Rob and I have been a part of a few virtual conferences over the last couple of months, and personally, I there's good and bad to them. I find them to be a little clunky, mainly if you're sitting at a table with multiple people. It's hard to have. Not everybody can talk the way they can when you're in person, so that can be kind of clunky. I do see a place for the virtual conferences or those virtual events. It's hard to replace that in person, though. Mm-hmm. It's hard to replace that in person. So that's there's going to be some give and take there, I think, around the country for the next few months for sure.
Gabe, I would say that's a great idea. I would 100% do that idea and keep doing it. The only thing I would caution is to make sure you're not just inviting your clients, but also that you're trying to get your rep to bring prospects in as well. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you can get that into an on-site, I would do it, whether it's in your office, whether you're doing it at the Chamber of Commerce. I didn't used to believe in the Chamber of Commerce years ago because they're usually too small for the sizes that we're going after. But for this next year coming up, you're going to want to be in that Chamber of Commerce, and you want to do that bourbon tasting, which is a great idea, at an on-site like that. So any way that you can do that is not your competitor down the road can replicate it right this second. That's what you want to do coming out of this mess.
Very good. Appreciate it. I got a tag along question. You kind of led into it. If you have it, I'll yield to somebody else.
Right now, you can keep the floor, Gabe.
Okay. So you brought on the chamber events and things like that. I run my own B&I type of networking group. Okay. And so we run it. We do it. We think we're more effective that way, and we're more casual than all of the paperwork that maybe a B&I group would do. So what do you think about those? I'd like y'all's thoughts on the value of the networking groups as well.
Yeah, Timmy.
Yeah, I can speak to B&I specifically. Back when Rob and I were in the industry, I used to be a part of the B&I group. I think to a B&I or B&I-esque kind of networking event can be hit or miss for MSPs from what we've seen. I know I didn't have a lot of success with it, mainly because I was in a group, and this can be typical of B&I. I was in a group of a lot of B2C, and I was one of the few B2B. Yeah. So I think if you can create a group, if you create a B&I equivalent of a B2B group, that's worth it. Because what the B&I, there's nothing wrong with B&I. It is a great networking opportunity. But more times than not, it's a better networking opportunity if you're a B2C. So finding that, establishing and finding a B2B networking group is huge. It's absolutely huge.
If you guys don't mind, I was going to say, go ahead, Rob. I was going to say, if you don't mind me jumping in, I do got my 2 cents on this one. I always built my own networking groups and played the role of host. So I would go out and find the people that specifically were good lead feeds for me. The types of groups that I would work with, maybe complementary software back when things were more server based and not SaaS based. Those people that I could bring leads to that would become part of my team if I referred them into an account and have my back within that account as well. So, I built a small group of about 6 or 7 people. We tended to be in probably about 60% of our accounts were mutual, but they would also have your eyes and ears for you when they were in that account, listening to things that timing wasn't right for you. And the simple thing I did was hosted it at my office. Hey guys, come on down. Whether it was a happy hour time for beers, or if it was bringing in bagels and coffee to get them to show up. I would run these things with a specific frequency too. I would do them no more than twice a month, because you got to give people time for the leads to mature. Make sure you're engaging those people between meetings too, because that's the number one problem I see with the BNIs and all that. Everybody comes required to bring a lead. They throw garbage around at the meeting, and then they don't have any conversations or follow up with these people till the next meeting. You got to build your own community. That I think that's, goes back to like stories. It's all about that today. Build your own community, get your own group built, and then be the guy that hosts and put the coffee there so they learn more and more about your business just by showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly why I started my own group and went that way. Now I open it up. I try to find, but B2B. That's it's not the kind of thing that the guy that cleans the carpets or the electrician, and nothing wrong with all of that. But that's not going to give me the leads that I need. I want real estate people. I want people that are in the market. They looking at office space, lawyers. Those type of people. Maybe one from each profession, and I try to build a group around that, and have had some success too.
Yeah. One of the things that I would do, Gabe, is like, for example, you spoke of the lawyer. Find the association that is surrounding that lawyer, and do a presentation that can offer continuing education credits as well. So that was one way that we found some pretty good success for all the industries, including construction. I know you mentioned the electricians. We had a construction one in our area that was really good.
Yeah, we had a lot of success there because construction kind of bled into, there were a lot of engineering companies, right?
Yeah.
So it just we had a lot of luck with associations, but then it kind of ties back to, that's more B2B. And very much worth doing, very much.
Yeah.
Cool.
Right.
Thanks. Good stuff.
Thanks, Gabe. Appreciate you coming out and joining us today. And with that, any other questions out in that anybody want to ask today, whether they you put them into Q&A or you pop your hand up?
While people are figuring that out and formulating their questions, I just want to go back to the virtual event thing and make sure that if anyone is planning on doing virtual events, they can be very awkward. And so you want to make sure you have it planned out really well. And if you're hosting, you need to make sure that you know what your talking points are right at the beginning. You want to be just really welcoming and engaging, because the virtual space is still very strange. We all show up in this room and no one knows who's supposed to be talking. So just make sure you're engaging people right away. That's all.
Thank you, Rachel. I agree completely with that. It is those first, think back, guys, those first few virtual meetings that you were taking in earnest, man, it was chaos.
Yeah.
I was on, just quick squirrel. I was on one last week, and this specific event, when you joined, you just got thrown into a table. Like there were vendors, tables all over the place.
That's right.
And you just randomly got put in a table.
Yeah.
So I popped on, and the guy's like, "Hey, what's your MSP? Where are you from?" And I'm like, "Hold on, man. I'm just coming on. Just give me a minute." Like I don't know where I am.
No holds barred, man.
Well, awesome. Well, I think at this stage we don't have any other questions coming in, so I think we can get to the point of wrapping up. For those of you that want to get in touch with OSR Manage, have any other conversations about what they do or about the sales process, you'll see we've got their contact information down below. I want to thank everybody for joining us once again for the event today. It's important that, for us to see you guys in the community here and hopefully answer the questions you're looking for. We generally build these events on a monthly basis, and it's based on the topics I hear from all of you as I'm talking to you throughout the month. So really appreciate your input as well. From a vCIOToolbox standpoint, keep an eye out. We're going to have a new release coming out next week. And at that stage, we're going to put together a webinar so you guys can jump in and learn a little bit about that process as well. And with that said, I look forward to seeing you all hopefully again in April.
All right.
Tim, Rob, thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem,
and Rachel,
bud.
always happy to have you here.
Yes.
Thanks,
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care,
Good day.
everybody.
Enjoy the rest of your
Bye.
day.
All right. Bye.